Hi guys, it's Jessica again, and welcome to this edition of the Quotation Bank Revision Tutorials, designed to help you in preparation for your GCSE English Literature exams. In these videos, we take a key quotation from the text and provide a great model for how to go about analysing it precisely and how to get the most out of it in an exam, as well as providing you with the framework for an excellent revision activity you can then do on your own. In this episode, we will be looking at an inspector calls, following the format of our Quotation Bank study guides, where we take 25 key quotations and explore interpretations, literary techniques, analysis, and suggestions on which essays the quotations could be used in. The Quotation Bank has guides for a variety of GCSE texts available on our website, Amazon, or online, so go and have a look, as well as follow us on social media. And if you find this video useful, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe here on YouTube. Today we are looking at a line delivered by the inspector in Act 2 during his interrogation of Mrs. Burling, where, in reference to Eva, he powerfully asserts, "She was here alone, friendless, almost penniless, desperate. She needed not only money, but advice, sympathy, friendliness." In the context of the play as a whole, this quotation is incredibly insightful as to the treatment of Eva. The inspector shines a light on the despicable behaviour of all of the Burling family, and on Gerald Croft. But it could be argued that his most aggressive, vicious attacks are reserved for Mrs. Burling. In contrast to Mr. Burling, Sheila and Gerald, who have all faced the inspector's anger at this point in the play, Mrs. Burling appears to be the character who not only displays no humanity towards others, but has no excuse whatsoever for how she behaves. Whilst Mr. Burling's treatment of Eva is inexcusable to a modern audience, within a capitalist, pre-war context, from a business sense, Mr. Burling is correct when he claims, "I was quite justified." Something Gerald confirms when he states, "I know we'd have done the same thing." For Sheila, her behaviour is selfish, juvenile and petty, but her reaction does display both an understanding of Eva as an individual, not just a girl of that sort, and her apologetic tone seems sincere to the audience. Gerald's behaviour is open to interpretation, but even the inspector admits Gerald at least had some affection for her and made her happy for a time. In the case of Mrs. Burling, there are no redeeming features, and even a contextual interpretation that suggests Mrs. Burling's behaviour stems from class differences is no excuse. Inspector Gould's assertion that she was here alone, friendless, almost penniless, desperate. She needed not only money, but advice, sympathy, friendliness, depicts Mrs. Burling as a heartless human being. So what are we going to do with this quotation in our answer, and how can the Quotation Bank help you in your exams? The Quotation Bank is designed to make sure that every point you make in an essay clearly fulfills the assessment objectives an examiner will be using when marking your work. So let's begin exploring this quotation by looking at interpretation. The interpretation of each quotation allows you to fulfill assessment objective 1, responding to the text and giving an informed, personal response. It is important you don't simply explain what the quotation means, but that you give your personal response to its effect on the audience. In this quotation, we discuss the fact that the inspector creates a very human image of Eva. She was not a worker or a charitable case, but a human being who required support from others. The language used to describe Eva and others in need varies throughout the play, be it employees, workers, cases, labour, girls of that sort. But the common link between them is that they are all plurals. The working class are defined as one large mass with no distinct identity or personality of their own. This dehumanizing language creates a distance between the workers and the Burlings, completely at odds with the inspector's message of community. By giving Eva emotions, needs, and by using the singular she, the inspector forces the Burlings to confront the reality that they have abused another human being, not a nameless, faceless worker. But now we want to delve into some detailed analysis of how Priestley conveys this idea to the audience. And we're going to start by identifying some literary techniques. As you can see here, using subject-specific terminology correctly, in this case the literary and dramatic devices used by Priestley, is a key part of Assessment Objective 2. And in this quotation, Priestley utilises a tricolon, or list of 3 if that is what you know it as, juxtaposition, and a number of abstract nouns. It is important at this stage to remember, never simply technique spot, that is, just identify literary devices, for example saying, this is a metaphor, or suggest Priestley uses imagery as it puts an image in the audience's head. When we identify a literary device, it is important to analyse the effect of that specific example. And if you don't know what the technique is, it really doesn't matter. It's the interpretation and analysis that counts. So let's get to that analysis. We have provided as much analysis as possible. It is a great idea to analyse the quotation in detail. You need to do more than just say what it means, but also what effect the language, form and structure has on the audience. So let's analyse some specific details. The image of a girl alone suggests vulnerability and isolation. The tricolon refers to her struggling socially. She is friendless, economically, penniless, and psychologically, she is desperate. It is key that she is almost penniless. On the one hand, this accentuates her desperation, since this is her final chance to be saved. But on the other hand, it makes it clear to the audience that there was still time for Mrs. Burling to intervene. She was here confirms Mrs. Burling was given the opportunity to do the right thing, and she actively chose not to. Her difficulties are juxtaposed with the solutions. Advice, sympathy, friendliness are abstract nouns that cost nothing, yet Mrs. Burling refused. It is the inspector's use of abstract nouns that perhaps most explicitly highlights the callous nature of Mrs. Burling's behaviour. Advice costs nothing. Indeed, throughout the play, Mrs. Burling offers advice freely to Sheila, Eric, and even the inspector later on. Yet here she allows class prejudices to blind her to such an extent she cannot even muster sympathy or friendliness. But it must be made clear that even within the context of upper-class 1912, her behaviour was extreme in its coldness. Sheila quickly describes it as cruel and vile, and even Mr. Burling responds dubiously to such an act. Finally, needed is a highly emotive word. Eva did not want or hope for support. She had an essential need for it to survive. Mrs. Burling was not denying Eva luxuries or undeserved wealth. She was refusing her the very necessities required to stay alive. The use of but after not only money confirms that her human needs were far greater than her financial ones. There is a great deal to explore in this quotation, but it is important that you only use it if it is relevant to the question that you have been set. And so we are going to look at which essays this quotation might prove useful in. Your answer needs to be focused to fulfil Assessment Objective 1. This section helps you choose relevant quotations and link them together for stronger essays. This quotation certainly provides useful exploration of the theme of responsibility within the play. Eva was not asking Mrs. Burling for money in a personal capacity, but in her role as a prominent member of a charitable organisation. Mrs. Burling had a responsibility to wider society in such an important job, and chooses to use and abuse her position. Compare her behaviour, for example, to that of Mr. Burling earlier in the play. It could be argued that Mr. Burling does have some argument in turning down Eva's request for higher wages from a purely financial standpoint, and he does pay the same wages as other employers. Mrs. Burling's decision is based on nothing but prejudice, another key theme within the play. Mrs. Burling's use of the phrase, "a girl of that sort," confirms she does not see an individual when they are here in front of her, but rather a stereotype loaded with prejudice. Wealth is also a key theme that could be explored within this quotation. As Inspector Gore states, she needed money in a way the incredibly wealthy and privileged Mrs. Burling could never imagine. Even more than this, Eva has turned to the charity as she has the morals not to accept stolen money, even if it means tragedy for her. Mrs. Burling can't even bring herself to offer free advice and support. Finally, the quotation speaks to the issue of society throughout the play. Mr. Burling had earlier dismissed the idea that we are all mixed up together like bees in a hive, and asserts he needed to look after himself. This quotation serves as a vivid description of what can happen when a society believes in the individual over community and all that nonsense. That brings us to the end of our analysis of this quotation for today. I hope you found it useful, and if you have, do give a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos from the Quotation Bank. Don't forget to check out our study guides, where we follow the revision structure you've seen today on 25 key quotations, as well as being full of essay plans, revision activities and more. They're available from our website and other online stores. And follow us on social media, send us a quotation, and we'll try to help you out with your analysis. Thanks for listening and good luck with the exams.